Welcome back to another episode of Technology for Independence with Christopher Cooley. Christopher is going to be talking with Joni Tew about autism, so stay tuned. Christopher Cooley is a Ohio ambassador with the Ohio Ambassador Tech Program, in which we discuss various different technologies that help individuals be more independent. Chris, it's always good talking with you.
It's great to be here, Patrick. I saw Joni videos on TikTok and how she's trying to bring awareness about moms with autism children. I thought it would be a great opportunity to bring Joni up and talk a little bit about her experience, any tips that she may have for other moms that may be struggling out there, and just give us some great information about being a mom, having a child with autism, and sometimes that can be a struggle. Joni, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about how it's like to be a mother with an autism child.
First, I want to say thank you guys so much for having me on. And my name's Joni Tew. I'm a 38-year-old mom of 7 children. My husband and I have a blended family. 2 of our children are on the autism spectrum, and our children range in ages from 3 to 22, and we also have 4 grandchildren. Talking about our children that are on the spectrum, Cash is 12 years old. He is the young man you primarily see on TikTok. He has level 3 or profound autism, meaning he requires a very high amount of support. His younger brother, Colt, is also autistic. He is 8 years old, and he is what's considered level 2, meaning he needs moderate support. He and Cash both have had interventions since they were toddlers. If you were to see Cash, you would very quickly recognize that he is a little different in his mannerisms and his speech. And Colt, to see him, unless you recognized his mannerisms, you would think that he was just a little quirky.
So what is it like to be a mom with children with autism?
Honestly, it has its challenges, and it has a lot of successes also. You know, every child is different. Being a mother in itself is a much more daunting task than I thought when I wanted a whole lot of kids. The weight of, raising a person to be a productive member of society, that in itself, the weight of that is really heavy. As far as being a mother of children on the spectrum, it can be very isolating. And that's actually what made me turn to the TikTok platform. I often record Cash's, we call them maladaptive behaviors. A lay term would be negative behavior. But I record the negative behavior, so to say, mainly for his doctor and to track a pattern of how often it's happening and exactly what is happening and potentially what triggers could be. So in doing that, it dawned on me, because of feeling very isolated, I said, I can't be the only one. I can't be the only parent facing this challenge. And I can't be the only person in the world that feels alone like this. And so I decided to share it to TikTok. And specifically the one that went viral in January is now got like 63 million views, which is insane to me. I recorded that because he was getting ABA therapy at that time, 4 days a week. And when his therapist would come, she was a beautiful young lady, and I actually think he had a little crush on her. So when she would come, he would mask his behaviors. He wouldn't have any negative behaviors or maladaptive behaviors while she was there. And there wasn't anything for us to like work through, so to say. But as soon as she would leave, he would act out. And those behaviors would happen with me. I'm his primary target because I am his most preferred person. So since those behaviors happened after she would leave, I recorded it that day and I sent it to her. And he had a doctor's appointment. That was on the 22nd of January. He had a doctor's appointment on the 27th. So I sent it to her and I sent it to his doctor. I never dreamed that it would blow up on TikTok the way it has. But here we are. And I really feel like this is a blessing that we've been given this opportunity to share what the good, the bad, and the ugly of living with a child with profound autism is like.
Have you found anything that helped with those behaviors and kind of calm them down?
So we use a lot of ABA techniques. ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. And in the autism community, it is a controversial therapy, but I believe the last research I read showed 48% of children experienced life-changing improvements in their behaviors. And so the cornerstone of ABA is to understand that behavior is communication. No matter what the behavior is, you have to stay calm and you have to stay neutral and you cannot react. And as humans, human nature is if somebody is aggressive towards you, it triggers you and you feel like you should be aggressive back. But when you do that, you feed that energy. And, I was raised in the South. I was born in Michigan, but I was raised in North Carolina since I was a year old. And so, corporal discipline is very popular where I'm from. And so raising Cash, that was always the suggestion, corporal punishment. But we found that, feeding into that energy or using corporal punishment it only made it worse. And it wasn't until we were exposed to ABA and researched it in depth that we learned that the best thing to do is to stay calm. It's completely contradictory to your intuition until you train yourself to stay calm.
Do you have any technology that help with your kids?
We have what's called a GoTalk 4 Plus. It is a augmentative assistance communication device, which a lot of children with profound autism require the use of an AAC device. That's what we call it for short. This one it has 4 blocks on it, and it has 4 cards that you insert. And when you touch it and it gives the word. Now, Cash does have the ability to speak. He does have language. The issue we have with communication is it causes so much anxiety for his thoughts to come from his brain out of his mouth that usually by the time he's able to adequately express what he really wants, we are in the process of maladaptive behaviors. Because as mom, I'm supposed to be able to read his mind and know what he wants. I think that's what he thinks. We also use Proloquo to go. It is an AAC app. You can get it on iPhone or Android. It is a bit pricey. It's $250. But I believe on World Autism Awareness Day, which is April 2nd, we wear blue the month of April, and I put my blue on a little early because I am a proud autism mom, and I want to share awareness. The app, I do believe, goes on sale half price for $125 on April 2nd. And I know that's a lot of money, but that has been the best. I did not get it on the sale. I missed the sale last year, but when I got it, it has been the best $250 that I've spent. What the app does is it combines pictures and words, and it utilizes a voice built into the app, and it has several different voices to choose from as far as accent or language, and it can be used as the voice for that child. I had heard about it for many, many years, and I did not realize how life-changing it could be. Because Cash, he understands verbal language. I get asked a lot, does he sign? Does he have any interest? So Cash understands some sign. We use minimal sign in our house, but Cash will not respond in sign. He will respond on the app or verbally.
When he was born, how long was it that you recognized that there was something that needed to be tested out?
So this is I get this question a lot. So when Cash was born, he was born full term. I didn't have any complications with my pregnancy. He was born 9 pounds, 7 ounces. At birth, he did have some issues regulating his blood sugar, and he couldn't regulate his own temperature. So, and back then they kept the baby in the nursery. So they kept him in the nursery for several hours, monitoring him and making sure that he was well enough to come be with me. And he grew and progressed like a typical child at 6 months old. And in fact, he actually reached most of his milestones very early. He rolled over, I think, at 3 months old. He was walking at 8.5, 9 months old, and was running by the time he was 10 months old. His first word was mama. And he said that, I believe he was 6.5 or 7 months old. So a lot of these things he did really early, except for his fine motor skills. And we used to joke, his father and myself, because he would line things up, even as less than a year old, in between 1 and 2. He would line things up. And if he moved something, say from the coffee table to the TV stand, he'd put it in the exact same order. Everything that had colors associated with it, he lined them up based on the color of the rainbow. Everything was organized in that fashion. When he was 2 years old, we realized that he could read. But you don't tell people that your 2-year-old can read, because people think you're crazy. That's just something you keep to yourself. But we didn't realize at that point that it didn't necessarily read with comprehension. Like if he would sound out things phonetically, he's always loved phonics. The alphabet has been an obsession from the beginning. And so he would sound things out phonetically, like a picture of an elephant. He would recognize that was an elephant. But if it was a sentence, the elephant is walking, he could read it. But as far as comprehension, I don't think that was there, because we still struggle with comprehension even now. So some of the things that we noticed, my family actually noticed earlier than I did, because my ex-husband, his father, and I would joke that he was OCD and maybe bipolar, because he would have these really random outbursts of laughter. I didn't know that at the time. That's a sign of autism. And he would go from crying to laughing. He had a crazy high pain tolerance. I didn't know that was a sign either. When he was really young, I worked full time, and I'm a paramedic. So my mom would keep him for me. And things that we noticed primarily happened at her house. But she had to start guarding the dryer lint, because he would, while she was doing laundry, he would scoop the dryer out of the lint out of the little dryer thing, and he would chew on it like a cow with cud. He wouldn't eat it, he wouldn't ingest it, but he would chew on it. And I thought that was bizarre. And I explained this in one of my TikTok videos. Cash was my baseline baby. I'd never really been around babies before. So he was my baseline of, learning all about babies and what they do. And So I knew that was peculiar, but I didn't think it was super alarming. Another thing I noticed was he would play with the prism that would come in the sunbeams in my mom's window. Instead of playing with toys like you would think that a typical toddler would do, he would lay on the floor and he would play with the sunbeams and making shadows and moving his fingers. And now I know that was self-stimulatory behavior. But he would keep his fingers close to his face and move his fingers really close, really fast in front of his eyes and move his hands together. So those things were apparent, but I was so naive as to what was normal and what wasn't that the puzzle didn't come together for me. When he was 17 months old, my father was the one who actually mentioned to me that perhaps Cash had autism. And my father, he was not able to read and write. And in my naivety, I thought, well, how would him and mama know what autism is? You know, I'm a trained medical professional and my knowledge is so limited. All I knew about autism was Rain Man, really, you know. So he is the one who had that conversation with me to mention it. Cash also, he only had about 3 words at a year old. And I know now that he did not use them purposefully. He has what's considered echolalic speech, which means he'll have a word and he'll just repeat that word. So my father mentioned it to me when he was 17 months old. At his 18-month well check, I mentioned it to his doctor. We saw the PA at that practice that day. And when I mentioned it to her, she kind of scoffed and laughed and said, well, he doesn't look autistic to me. And I mean, well, she's trained more than I am, so I took her word for it. But I started looking on myself. And there was one young lady that I knew at work whose child was autistic. He's, I think, 2 or 3 years older than Cash. I reached out to her and I said, look, can I send you some videos? Can I talk to you about what I'm seeing in Cash? Get what your thoughts are, because she had experience with it. And she was the only person I knew that had experience with it. And she said, sure. So I sent it to her. She said, yeah, I see reason for concern. So just document, record everything you can. And at his next appointment, you need to show this to his doctor. And that's what I did. And the doctor still didn't seem like there was a lot of reason for concern. And I finally told her there is, and you can actually Google this, there is a form called the MCHAT, MCHAT. And it is autism, not diagnostic form. Okay, you can only be diagnosed by a psychologist. But it is a form that you fill out, and based on the answers, it can let you know if you really need to pursue an evaluation or if there is cause for concern. So at his 24-month appointment, I asked her, I said, look, there's enough concern of the family. Can we just do the MCHAT? And if there's no concern, then there's no time wasted. But if there is concern, we can start interventions. And I will never forget the look on her face when she came back in that room. She sat the paper down after I filled it out and she went and scored it. And she was a completely different person. She said, there's cause for concern here. I already knew that. But I had to have a doctor's referral to get evaluations. So I let her send the referrals. And then I found a different pediatrician who worked with children with special needs. And that was in October, his 24-month appointment. And by December, we had a speech evaluation, an occupational therapy evaluation, and a psychological evaluation. I believe it was December 6th that we got the diagnosis of 2013. Cash was 26 months old. And I had never considered this until hearing some of the other parents' stories on TikTok. But I'm the type of person where, you know, if you give me information, I'm like, okay, what can we do? what do we do next? What's the next steps? But I had heard another mom's story where it put her into such a state of depression that she couldn't even hardly function for a good year, just accepting it. And there is a grieving process that goes along with it, because what you think your future is versus what now your future, there is a big question mark. Not saying that he can't do all the things, but now we've got more challenges than others. And that brings about a grieving process as a mother of, now we have to make this big adjustment.
There may be other parents out there struggling. Any advice would you give them to help them through their struggle?
My advice for parents facing a new diagnosis or struggling with coming to grips with a diagnosis is this: be patient. Our timeline, a diagnosis does not mean that your dreams won't happen. It means that your timeline might look a little different. It doesn't mean give up on the dream and the hopes that you have for your child. You may just need a little extra help to get there.
What kind of books that may be out there that you may have read to help you?
So there are there's a lot of books out there on autism. I have 3 that have really helped me. The first one is called The Out of Sync Child. 80% of children with autism have sensory processing disorder. You don't have to have autism to have sensory processing disorder, but it is very common for it to kind of go hand in hand. The Out of Sync Child gives you tools and walks you through kind of what to do when you face certain things. And that is by Carol Stock Kranowitz. Another one that has really helped me for Cash and Colt, because again, Colt is autistic also. Now with intervention, we have seen a vast improvement as far as his speech goes, and he doesn't look so different from his peers, right? But the Autism Answer book, it's by William Stillman, and it's got more than 300 of the top questions that parents ask. And I got all these books when Cash was newly diagnosed, but I keep referring to them over and over again. And the last one is An Early Start for Your Child with Autism. And it's by Sally J. Rogers, Geraldine, Dawson, and Laurie, Vismara. The Autism Answer book is really my go-to because this is a book that parents have given questions to, and as a parent, it's a good resource because it has questions from other parents who have experienced what you are experiencing and an answer to help you deal with whatever challenge you may be facing.
What if a mother that may have a hard time reading or maybe don't understand words, if there are podcasts, YouTube channels, what would you recommend?
So there are several podcasts that discuss autism. I actually have a podcast myself, and it's available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, anywhere where podcasts are streamed. It's called The Autism Mom Life: The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it's also on YouTube. I broadcast it to YouTube. My YouTube channel is autism_mom_life. And in my podcast, we talk about, what challenges, what successes our kids face and we face as families. And I created a podcast in order to create a safe place to have community where maybe other families wouldn't feel so alone in this autism journey.
Is there any advice that you would encourage other parents out there? Research.
Read. find other parents. Social media, we're very blessed in this age of social media. It is a great resource to help you find other people who are facing what you're facing. There are a ton of support groups on Facebook, but as a parent, I would research, read all that you can, listen to all that you can, podcast, YouTube, vlogs, whatever. Just try and absorb as much information as you can.
We're talking with Christopher Cooley and Joni Tew, Technology for Independence. Chris, great guest that you brought on today.
A little bit about your story and giving us the opportunity to spread the awareness.
Well, thank you all so much for having me. This has been a pleasure, and thank you for your platform of wanting to educate others and making this even possible to share awareness and education with other families.